Hey, everybody. I'm super excited to bring you my appearance on Donna Parker's podcast. She is a master DeMartini facilitator. You've heard her on Next Level Healing, as well as the master himself, Dr. John DeMartini, one of the most intelligent human beings I've ever met on the face of the planet. The man has written hundreds of books and has changed hundreds of thousands of lives. So click the button below and join me as I reveal more secrets of the subconscious mind and how I went from Hollywood to healing.
Hello, and welcome to Resolve, Evolve, and Rewire with Donna Parker. And today I am so honored to welcome our guest, Dr. Tara Perry. She specializes in core trauma transformation. She helps people get to the root of their biggest block, connecting them to their authentic selves, and thrives in deep, confident peace. For 25 years, Dr. Perry has successfully treated celebrities, Olympians, first responders, world record holders, doctors, scientists, teachers, parents, and children. She's been featured on Lifetime Television, the Los Angeles Times, Fox Sports, magazines. For 10 years, Dr. Perry taught at the #1 acupuncture college in California. In 2000, she was chosen to be the first acupuncture teacher at the famous Arthur Ashe Center at UCLA. Dr. Perry also hosts her own podcast as well, and that can be available on all major platforms, and it's called Next Level Healing. So thank you so much for being here, Dr. Tara. I'm so grateful to have you.
So great to see you. We had so much fun the other day, and I'm looking forward to continuing it.
Likewise, like I said last time, it feels like we could just talk for days. So tell me, what when you look at your life and your history, and what are some of the things that inspired you to go into the trajectory? I love understanding, our stories and what catapults our purpose, our inspiration in life. So
Our telos is so important, isn't it?
yes, it is, as Aristotle says. Yes, and it's interesting. Go ahead.
I as far as health is concerned, I was very lucky. I grew up, my dad and mom were he was on the board of the Price Pottenger Foundation, which is one of the oldest nutritional medicine foundations on the planet. So I grew up with no white flour, no white sugar in the house back when they thought Twinkies was a vitamin.
Right. I remember that.
And he was into aerobics. So he was running up and down the road, reading Kenneth Cooper before anybody thought that was cool. So that was a nice foundation. My mother grew up on a farm, so all the food was fresh and, uncontaminated. So she, thank God, is super strong, even though she's now, in her 90s. So then I got enamored with the film business. Aaron Russo happened to live next door to us when I was in college, so I learned how to read scripts for a living. And after several years of being in that business, I just thought, okay, this is not for me. I didn't feel like my soul was being fulfilled. So I talked to my homeopath one day and I said, what would I do if I want to do what you did? Now, keep in mind, I'm at the #1 talent agency in Hollywood at this point. And we had lawyers and MBAs from Harvard and Stanford working in the mailroom for minimum wage. So, I mean, it was extremely competitive. Everybody wanted to be there. And I was like, okay, I want something else now. And I wouldn't say everybody thought I was crazy, but a lot of people thought I was crazy. And then a bunch of them ended up being my patients when I was, in practice years later in Santa Monica and then Beverly Hills. That
takes courage to break away from the mold, or what, you should be the definition of success, if you will.
And it's not like I didn't have my doubts, but it's when I called up my path and asked him, what would I do if I want to do what you do? Because I was really impressed with how he healed people. It's like God parted the clouds and said, this is what you're going to go do. And it was scary. And it was weird. And, there weren't times that I didn't have doubts, like, gosh, did I, make a huge mistake walking away from the center of the universe?
In mainstream society, right? Exactly. That's what people call success.
Right.
Mm,
But I mean, I really never looked back because I went to China and studied Chinese medicine for a year in Chengdu. That was 2 years after Tiananmen Square. So it was a completely different world there at that time. And then I came back and finished up my acupuncture studies. And for, 23 years, I was in Santa Monica, Beverly Hills, and Belmont Shore, helping people with acupuncture and nutritional medicine, which I love. I mean, I still love it. Um, but one day somebody came in and she had a terrible trauma past and she was all excited about this stuff she was doing. And when I found out it was based in hypnosis, I said, okay, I want to meet your person because I always suspected that hypnosis was incredibly powerful, but I hadn't really I hadn't met the introduction that made that, real for me. Although I had seen the two top hypnotists in Los Angeles, but I still found it a very conscious based process. It wasn't bypassing the conscious mind and getting into the subconscious mind. And as you know, and I'm sure lots of your listeners know, your conscious mind is only processing 30 bits of information or 40 bits of information per second. And your subconscious mind is processing 40 million bits of information per second.
right. At least.
So if your conscious mind wants one thing and your subconscious mind wants something else, who's going to win that? Your subconscious mind every single time. So that's why people struggle, as you know, with years and years of therapy and not being able to accomplish what they want, still having the angst, the fear, the PTSD symptoms, the panic symptoms, and not sleeping at night, and then compensating with drugs or shopping or sex or whatever the thing is that has to fill the hole that they perceive is there.
Yeah.
Long story short, I just threw myself into studying this when I realized how powerful it was. And it kept surprising me the kind of things that people were healing from. People with labial blood pressure, blood pressure that was going up and down, and they'd done $50,000 worth of all the best,
Yes.
biomedical studies with the top doctors, and really after a session it like leveled out, and it's like, how did that happen? Because something in the past, usually between the ages of 2 and 10, is firing and wiring that life is not okay.
Yep.
I'm not safe, I'm not good enough, I have to try harder, I have to fix something, I have to please something, whatever that story is. As you know, it's not what happens to us, it's the story that we tell about ourselves, the world, and other people that ends up getting us. So the good news is when you're working with somebody, it's not, as you know, that difficult to go and rewire those patterns.
Hey guys, studies are showing that 68% of people that watch podcasts regularly don't click the subscribe button. Do me a huge favor. If you like this content, click subscribe so other people know where to go for the cool stuff. Thank you.
So I would love to, there's a couple of things you said that I love. One, I so appreciated when you talked about the C's party. When you listen to the call, right? When you listen to the intuition, the whispers of the soul, as you say, listen to that calling and how easy things line up. And it's walking through the fear, right? I mean, so many people stay stuck. Can you talk about that a little bit?
In my case, I always say decisions are easy when there's no alternative. I felt like I was suffocating in that environment, and at some point, it just, I don't know, when God parts the clouds and says, "Go do something,"
Go do it.
You don't say, I'm really busy this week.
Right. Sorry. But you know what I love what you just said too, is it literally, that's the feedback, right? Like it has to get so painful often, right? For us. And that's some of the gift of that, to say, okay, well, here's the wake up call. And then to have the courage to listen to that calling and walk your purpose, walk your path. I can feel the inspiration when you talk about what doing what you love and loving what you do. Can you share some of the stories, your clients that you've been able to transform their lives?
Yeah,
Tell us more about your process and what you do.
Sure. The exciting thing for me is just that it's so consistent, and people who, and I always start with the emotions because the body keeps the score. So typically when I'm working with somebody, I'll say, what are 3 things that you don't want to feel anymore? And sometimes it's just 1 or 2, but I like to offer them the place to, give me 3. And usually it's anxiety is a big one. Overwhelmed, not good enough. A lot of people with worthiness issues. In fact, we have a mutual friend in the podcasting world who he was pushing up as soon as he pushed up against a feeling of unworthiness, he realized, wait a minute, I don't want this. This isn't me. I want this gone. So he called me up and he said, I want your next appointment. And right away, he started sleeping better than he had slept in his entire life. He started dumping the extra weight that he was carrying around. And when you feel worthy and you know what your strengths are and you're able to ask for what you're worth, people tend to make more money. So he ended up making an extra $50,000 in the first 90 days of doing the process.
Yes.
And what's great about that is you're no longer pretending to be somebody else. And I know, this totally aligns with the work that you do.
Yeah.
Because it's frustrating and it's fearful and it's not a pleasant place to be trying to be somebody else. When we authentically own who we are and have great boundaries, then we're able to build the good things in our lives and not keep feeding into the negative things.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And it's amazing how the outer reflects the inner.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the process when you to peel away for you and your modality to strip away those personas of unworthy or those false perceptions or limited belief? How do you tap into the unconscious with clients?
Great question.
It is to your point. It really is amazing once you transform and shift, within a few months, you're making 50,000 because again, we're tuning into a radio station, right? And the outer really does reflect the inner. So, please share it.
And the universe can only give us what we feel worthy to receive.
Yes.
So if we've got blinders on that says it's not available to me, it could be sitting there right in front of you and you won't see it.
Yep.
And I see that over and over and over again. So as you know, there's 4 brainwave states. We're in beta right now, so we can multitask. We can be aware of multiple things going on at once. That's great for navigating the 3D world. If you've got to get from point A to point B, get in your car, navigate traffic, obey the stop signs.
Right. Yep. For we're hiking and there's a bear. We want to react. Beta's great. Yeah.
Right. So in alpha, that's kind of when we're daydreaming, we're meditating, we could be watching television, we could be focused on, the brain waves are starting to slow down there. And in light theta, where you're kind of drifting in and out of sleep, that's an ideal space to be in if you want better access to the subconscious mind. And people have a lot of misnomers about hypnosis. I love to say the bad news is you're already hypnotized. The good news is you can rewrite that program to something that's more suitable to who you are today. People are like an iPhone 16 operating on iPhone 4 technology. And they wonder why they don't get better results. It's also like carrying around a backpack that you're not aware you're hauling around. That's an extra 75 pounds. And once you dump that, you have more energy at the end of the day. You can be more present for the relationships in your life. I worked with one gal who she's a wonderful oral surgeon. In fact, she just called me last night. And she said, I just don't feel comfortable asking for money. I don't know what the problem is. And she's a beautiful human being. She does great work. People love her. But she just couldn't ask, for the money that was due her. Yeah. So we went in and found out there was a time when she was doing her homework with her sister. Her sister was even more brilliant than she is. She's a leading surgeon in the country. And her father said something that just wasn't, she didn't interpret as particularly kind or loving, and so she felt less than. And it's so crazy that message got wired in there for so many years, and all we had to do was rewire that. And I called her up a couple of months later. I said, "Hey, how are you doing?" She says, "Oh my God, I go home with more energy. I'm a better wife. I'm a better mother." And I said, "Dollar-wise, what's it worth to you to be able to ask for what you're worth?" She says, "I make an extra about $10,000 a month."
Yep. Boom. Well, and I know you and I share the same philosophy on traditional therapy. Yeah. Like therapist, actually spells the rapist as
I learned that from you, Donna, and I thought that was so interesting.
Well, and I can't take credit. I learned that from Dr. John DeMartini. But there's something about, around that tell me about your philosophy compared to some of the modalities that are out there. Because I know for me, the concern is that people go to some therapist and will stay in this story, and they're paid and almost reinforced in some of the dramas and the traumas, and cut people out and set boundaries. So yeah, please share.
Yeah, the magic, well, in your work where you're taking the positive and the negative and then imploding it on each other, and therefore releasing light in the process. Once the subconscious mind can see, oh, that's a hot poker I'm hanging on to. It's not protecting me, because the brain, of course, is going to keep reverting back to what's familiar, even if what's familiar is horrible.
Yeah.
The brain prefers that familiar hell to an unfamiliar heaven, because unfamiliar is scary. It's weird.
Right. It's just that known feels safe, because then it can feel predictable.
Yeah. And
No
if we
matter
look
what.
where we've evolved from, we are a tribal species. And if we were rejected by our tribe, even if our tribe was insane or crazy, mean, horrible, whatever, a lot of us, a lot of people grew up with parents who were alcoholic, abusive, absent. Raise your hand if you had perfect parents. Nobody raises their hands.
Yeah.
And it's not their fault. They did the best they can with what they had. But our brains think that pattern, even if it's not healthy, is safe because it's familiar. So the trick is to get the unfamiliar to become familiar, and the familiar to become unfamiliar. And once the subconscious mind can see, oh, that's a hot poker I'm hanging on to, that's hurting me, that's causing me damage, that's dangerous, it'll drop it. But then it needs that clear pathway from where it is to where it wants to go. And the language for that is different for everybody, although there's lots of commonalities. So when I'm working with somebody, well, first, we're going to meet on a Zoom call and make sure that their goals are in line with, what makes sense. I want to know, I call it my GPS call. So what are the 3 things you don't want to feel anymore? What are the 3 things you do want to feel? And so that's like New York and Los Angeles. We're going to leave one city and take a flight to the next. And you can't do that if you don't know the city that you're leaving from and the city that you're going to.
Yep. Yep.
So that's, how we start to navigate that. And then as we're doing the session together, when you're dropped into that alpha state, and I give people practice audio that they can work with. And then of course, there's little tricks like looking up with your eyes and taking 3 breaths. And on the last one, you allow your eyelids to gently drop down. You'll notice they're fluttering a little bit. That's a nice way to get you into rapid eye movement. Just simple little trick. And hypnosis is not, people watch Hollywood and they watch Las Vegas, and they think, it's, you're drooling on the floor, your legs are going numb, you're clucking around like a chicken, you don't remember anything.
Right.
So people are frightened by that, and that couldn't be further from the truth. It's a cooperative thing, and you actually have increased clarity, not decreased clarity. And it's not designed to create a show. It's designed for somebody to get clear on what really is pulling the levers inside of them. It's like the Wizard of Oz. When Toto pulled the curtain back and saw the little old man pulling the levers, it's like Dorothy and the Scarecrow and the Tin Man couldn't be afraid of that anymore, because they could see what it was and what it was doing.
Yeah. Beautiful. And that the power is within.
Exactly.
Right? With those red shoes. Like, we all have our red shoes.
Yeah.
And it's actually remembering the magnificence that's already there, and what happens in our society is we dismember, we dismember parts, personas, to your point, so we can fit in for survival, because it wasn't safe. If we didn't camouflage, right, we were like kicked out of the herd. So learning to change and and that's why we'll stay, like you're saying, in those really unsafe environments, because it's familiar, because it's safe, it's predictable. We know how to navigate it.
And as you've said, not only do we stay in those, but once we get out of those, if we don't fix the program, we just attract them all over again.
Oh yeah. Right. We just, we'll cut it out, but then it comes back around and back around and back around. Beautiful. And one of the things I also help, similar probably when you bring the unconscious conscious, is I love working with family systems and helping them see actually the function and what they're calling dysfunction, because some of my clients that have alcoholic parents are the most high functioning, achieving entrepreneurs, right? So it's actually helping them understand that they have this fantasy that they had the soccer, the Betty Crocker, the PTA mom, which has advantages and disadvantages for our kids. But actually the one with the parents that weren't there actually allows that right? That child to step into becoming a parentified adult. And they're some of the most high functioning kids. So I love to tell people you can't fuck it up, and we're going to fuck it up, like in the perfect way, right?
Yeah.
Like in the way that every child is going to leave and have a perception of, what they'll do different. And that's part of, in my perception, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. That's part of those epigenetic tags where each generation kind of can swing in those polarities to come into that middle of that healing. And like you said, we take those big backpacks of our family, our perception, of what we're trying to heal, and then we do the best we can, and then we pass it down to the next generation. But it sounds like through your work, it's bringing that unconscious pattern conscious, and then integrating and also then rewiring and changing that belief system.
And after we've worked together for that couple of hours, a pattern will have become clear. And then what I do is I make them a customized audio tape that they listen to each and every night. So they're firing and wiring those neural pathways to what they do want. And as you know, from epigenetics and all the videos that people are now taking of the brain as it's developing new neural pathways, when you stop feeding neural pathways that you don't want, those actually prune away because they're not getting fed anymore. And new neural pathways, and we know that the brain is very neuroplastic even in adulthood. You give it new information and it's going to form new pathways because it's got new jobs to do.
Isn't it the wisdom of our body magnificent? I mean, isn't it magnificent?
So incredibly so. One of the guys I just interviewed was Gil Headley, and he's the guy that they show at all the Joe Dispenza events where he shows you the pineal gland and
right.
amazing footage on the vagus nerve. He's done human dissection for 30 years, and he does it from a very heart-centered place. He's a very, very deeply spiritual person, very respectful. But what you see is that, I mean, when I watched 5 hours of one of his nerve tour videos, and when I took a walk outside afterwards, and the leaves were still off the trees, and I couldn't believe the trees were like a perfect mirror for our own neural pathways in our body.
Yes.
And it's like, gosh, not an accident.
Oh my God. No, isn't it magnificent? I mean, I was on a nature walk with my partner, John DeMartini, just this morning. And so interesting and not surprising, the synchronicity of this conversation, because he has the wisdom to tell me from every subatomic particle of the tree how we are mirroring. And so it was like we literally like had this moment of becoming one with the tree. So I am loving the synchronicity of this conversation right now.
And it's great when you don't need psychedelics to do that.
No, and we're like in this space right now, which is beautiful because that gets to transmit to all of our listeners too. It's beautiful. The oneness, to the degree that we can make everything and everyone us. I mean, from the subatomic to the astronomics.
And it's such an inside job.
It is. I mean, that's where it all is, right? Because anything in the illusion is just a projection of the outer.
And as Gil talked about, I mean, even, when we look, I'm looking at you and it's like a movie screen, and you're looking at me and you see a movie screen, but that movie screen, even in our brains, doesn't exist anywhere. It's just vibrations hitting other, transducers being transferred into something else, and then we perceive it as if it's a movie screen, but it doesn't exist anywhere.
No space, no time.
It's just it's a bunch of like frequencies. It's a bunch of zeros and ones.
Yep. Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
Bringing that back to healing, we can change the zeros and ones that aren't serving us, that are illusions and illusions and outdated programming. And that's exciting.
And it doesn't have to be, I have to be in therapy because I'm broken or I'm fucked up for 30 years. No.
And it's really
Like-
about reclaiming the energy that is so plentiful. For example, I worked with a guy that, had broken his spine 40 years ago in a motorcycle accident. And he was all excited when he found out I was an acupuncturist. And I said, you've done acupuncture, you've done chiropractic. Why don't we just go to Command Central, your big, beautiful subconscious mind, find out what's getting in the way of your healing? Because if you break your femur, the thickest bone in your body, that should be healed better than ever in 8 weeks. He said, great, sign me up, because he was already an advanced Dr. Joe guy. And in 2 sessions, he didn't have the pain anymore.
Yep. Beautiful. So
He
beautiful.
just freed up those neural pathways that weren't serving him. They got to redirect to something else. I've had people that were allergic to everything but 5 foods, and their lives were getting completely constricted. They were living in fear. People who were, attacked by a dog and went through 6 jaw surgeries and developed a choking disorder. And in, 3 sessions, they don't have to go to the ER anymore. They don't have to do 2 acupuncture sessions a week, biofeedback, neurofeedback. They can just get on with their life.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be as hard as we want to make it. Like you're saying, it doesn't. And that inner is reflecting the outer, and we literally are getting symptoms. The body loves us so much in its wisdom that it's actually giving us symptoms to try to wake us up to our authentic self, right? So even what you said about that woman, the contraction and her world was getting small, it's like, yep. And where is that reflecting everywhere else in her life? And so, yeah, I love what you're saying. And knowing that the body, the wisdom that created the body can heal the body. I had a situation, and I broke my ankle. And every surgeon told me that I was going to, I went to 3 different opinions, but I was like, nope, there are unlimited possibilities in the quantum, right? And so I did, my modality and work around it so I could love it, appreciate it, take the wisdom. And I went back and I found a different doctor and asked for a different x-ray. And he said, I think you can heal it. And I'm like, there is unlimited possibilities in the field, in the quantum field. And I did, and again, it's the placebo effect. I mean, there's so many ways for, the entry and the access point.
I was once in the hospital, paralyzed from the neck down. I had Guillain-Barré syndrome, and it was a crazy story how that whole thing came about. And literally, I manifested the only neurologist in Los Angeles that told me exactly what I wanted to hear. And, he told me my chances of healing were excellent. And I also manifested another person who was a go-to person that people went to for nutritional medicine. And he gave me a very positive. So I created I just, in my mind, I was going to be the fastest healing case on record. So when the doctor at this major hospital said, don't expect to get your body completely back, I just made a giant red delete button, pressed it as hard as I could, and went on with my healing journey. I was so adamant that I was going to be the fastest healing case on record. They put in my chart that I was in denial, but yet I was back to work in 3.5 weeks.
Beautiful. And what do you attribute it to?
Well, again, and this isn't to say there isn't a time and a place for Western medicine. If we break a bone, don't run to your acupuncturist, go to the hospital, get a cast. Right. If you're having chest pains, do the appropriate things.
Do the things. Yeah.
Do the things.
Yeah.
However, whatever we choose to do, if we free up the healing energy that's available to us, and stop spending it on stress, shame, blame, all the things that aren't serving us, that aren't performing well for us. It's really interesting how we can. I mean, I've worked with so many people that had headaches and migraines.
Yeah.
And again, once you get out of the sympathetic nervous system mode and into parasympathetic, where your body can actually function, you can have a digestive system that's functioning optimally, an immune system, a hormonal system. That's just kind of a no-brainer. I mean, I do. If somebody twists their ankle or something like that, I constantly refer out to stuff like that, because it's like you don't need my big whole 90-day process to deal with something that 2 acupuncture treatments can take care of.
But I think our culture and our society, we're so wired for the quick fix, or Western medicine is, we'll just give you a pill. We want pleasure. right? We want a pleasure. We want to avoid any pain. And so let's just, repress it. You have anxiety. Here you go. Here's a medicine. You have this, as quick fix as quickly as we can. Right. Which is no different than how you started with shopping, eating, drinking, fucking right now, the things that we do for that.
And as you said, that was great the other day. We are wired to be unconscious, and it takes courage, and it takes willingness, and it takes raw honesty with yourself and others to claim that. And our culture, as Pema Chodron says, likes to fall asleep.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we're literally wired for mechanicality, right? In our physiology. So, and the interesting thing is the more we repress the pain with the medication, the more it has to eventually express and get even louder, which is the interesting thing, so it might be a temporary solution, but if we don't get curious about what's underneath it, all the symptoms that it creates from taking the medication gets louder. So
I'm sure you've used the analogy, God knocks on the door, and then if you don't answer the door, he knocks a little louder, and then he breaks the door down.
Exactly. I don't know about
he'll have the whole house will shake. So I mean, sometimes these messages are really important to get. And one of my top interviews from last year was Nancy Rhines, and she ended up being hit by an SUV, hanging on to the hood of the car, then hanging onto the license plate, then hanging onto the axle underneath it.
Yeah.
Breaks a ton of bones, but in her journey to her near-death experience, her guide said, we wouldn't have had to do this if you just got the memo earlier.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And but the great thing about life, it's so relentless. It loves us so much that it is going to make sure if we don't listen to the small subtleties, the 2x4, then we get the 10x4, right? And I sometimes my parts can be really stubborn. So you know what? It all serves. It all serves. And the wisdom, that's the thing I love, is that if we appreciate just every moment is happening for us, and even when it has to get loud and you're on your back in bed, or, 2 years ago, you have those, I don't even want to exist, or, rock bottom moments, the where you want to die, it is because there's a persona ready to die, right? It is the near death because you're ready for a rebirth. The dark is the initiation for the light to come through so we can listen to our soul. So, yes, sometimes I can listen to the whisper, and sometimes I need the 10x4. And the cool thing is, it just is. And it all serves. And every moment of our life is worthy of love when we can really, pull back the illusion and see that there's a divine hidden order in the chaos that we think is chaos anyway.
Nicely said.
Yeah. Well, I could talk to you for hours and days. I love, I love getting to do this podcast because I get to meet with inspiring individuals, that have a vision and a mission and a purpose on the planet. So,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your work and your service to the globe. And I'm just so honored to have you on my show. And how can listeners get in touch with you? Is there anything else you'd love to share before we wrap?
Oh gosh, what are some other really cool stories I had? I mean, I've just found it, mentally, physically, emotionally, and financially, it seems to help catapult people to a higher level being. And even people that aren't suffering from something terrible, sometimes they just want to up their game with whatever their work is. I'm remembering somebody that I just recently worked with, and when he had a bunch of stuff in his past and just wanted to get rid of it because it was dragging him down, making him feel unworthy, stressing him out. It was actually causing some significant health issues in his life as well. And once we took care of it, he called it the new, I'll call him Dan, the new Dan, and his whole family could see how he had changed. And when he went, and he did some really high level work. So he was meeting with somebody that is one of the largest real estate owners in a neighboring state around here. And the person that he was talking to, wasn't particularly an easy person to get along with. So people struggled with that, but because he had this new sense of worthiness and these, just like this invisible, beautiful magnet around him that was drawing to him, that was what was serving him, and just automatically repelling that wasn't, he was able to hold that space and work with this very difficult person in a way that, you know, he wouldn't have been able to do had he not done the process. So, you know, he was able to close a deal that was, you know, one of his bigger deals. Um, but I mean, the big payoff is quality of life. It's being able to not just stress out so much every single day about not being good enough, and you know, all the shitting on ourselves that we do. And um, people often describe it as learned helplessness or invisible hooks, invisible barriers. And they go through therapy and they don't feel like they can, it's like having an itch you can't scratch.
Oh, I love that. I love your analogies. They're brilliant. They're so brilliant. That's so uncomfortable. That's a great metaphor.
You finally get there and you're like,
oh,
this is so good.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyway, but it's all about outcomes, and that's the thing that really lights me up, is people being able to get off medications that they don't want to be on anymore. You know, obviously safely and with the blessings of whoever they're working with. You know, having better physical outcomes, better sleep. That's a huge one. There's so many Americans that don't sleep well through the night, and we need that 7 hours of solid, beautiful, wonderful sleep so we can get rid of the 1/4 ounce of toxic material that builds up in our lymphatic system each and every night.
Wow. Yeah. Well, and I love, you know, one of the things you said is about creating fulfillment, or, you know, in their life. Right. And it's interesting because, you know, you started talking about money, and I don't know about you, but I've almost found that organically comes along when we value ourselves, right? Like that's just a reflection. But when you get in alignment with actually listening to what you're here to do, and doing what you love, and fulfillment in your mission, it almost feels like you get off that treadmill, right? Like that hamster wheel, like you said, where you can just sort of like allow.
I was on the hamster wheel for quite a while.
Oh, girl, me too. And she's tired.
It's like you're trying to bend and twist and negotiate, and you go home, you're exhausted, and you need that, you know, second glass of wine, or maybe the third glass of wine every night.
Yes. And then coffee in the morning. And yes. And learning to, what I've found is that really when you're in fulfillment, like I love getting to have this conversation, traveling the world in this amazing setting and this healthy body, and getting to impact anyone's listeners, which will be the perfect synchronicities who finds us. That's all just so inspiring. We can fall so in love with the moment. I'm not trying to create, I'm not efforting, I'm not trying to attract wealth. I already am wealth in whatever form, right? Like it's being able to just fall so in love with your life that I perceive from wholeness that those things just organically flow in, because the second we're in that chasing, which for chasing success is the thing that keeps repelling it. At least that's what I found.
You're acknowledging you don't have it.
Exactly. Yes.
Which is the big trick, because it's like, how do you get something in your life? Do we pretend we don't want it? No, you have to experience the gratitude of having it.
And embodying it. Yes.
I mean, one of the gals, I just interviewed Dr. Joe Dispenza's lead scientist, Dr. Hamal Patel. So that's on my podcast about 6 weeks ago. And we discussed at the end of it, a woman that I had met. I mean, people, when you really nail this work, people are doing what previously was considered medically impossible, and it's being documented.
Yes.
So I met a woman who had her rectum surgically removed because she was diagnosed with cancer. And after she said, when I got out of the surgery, I knew immediately I made a mistake. Because she was left rectally incontinent. And I think it was a misdiagnosis. So, I mean, she had to not only forgive the doctor, but she said, I have no choice. I have to regrow my rectum. It took her 1.5 years, and she did it.
She did it.
And she didn't do it by being
in
a place of fear, of doubt. She was in a place of gratitude and thankfulness that it had already happened.
Yep. In the quantum body, right? Like, whoa, just creating from that wholeness.
Because they're showing that the energetic creates the physical.
Exactly. Yes.
Woo.
Woo. Yeah, girl. So beautiful. Yes. And then just, when we're in the efforting and the doing and the being of all the things, we don't even get to slow down to just get to have presence to these conversations, which, I feel like we're in a whiteout where the vision's expanding, right? It's so beautiful to just give ourselves the gift of being and allowing and flowing, and
Let's do more of that. And
let's do it.
Let's create more environments for that.
Yes.
We don't even have to do that because they're already there in infinite.
It's already happening. It's already done. Well, thank you so much, Tara Perry. Thank you for all of your beautiful work, service, and inspiring mission. I'm honored to share this time with you. And for our listeners, if they would love to get in touch with you, you also have a podcast. What would you advise them?
On any platform, they can find me at Next Level Healing, Dr. Tara Perry, or you can go to NashvilleHealer.com or ConsultTara.com. They take you to the same place. If you want to actually have a time to connect with me and find out if this is a good fit for you, there's some clarity questions there that you can answer, and be delighted to connect that way.
Beautiful. Brilliant. Well, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time on Resolve, Evolve, and Rewire with Donna Parker.
This podcast is intended for the purpose of providing information and education. It does not provide advice and is not meant to be used for any self-diagnosis or the replacement of any kind of licensed professional. The creators and individuals appearing here do not endorse any specific tests, positions, medications, products, or procedures. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.